In the months ahead, we will all have to wrestle with the horror of what has unfolded this week. But we will struggle through it together. We will endure the pain together, and we will overcome together as Americans.
President Trump earlier this week calling for unity in the face of this week's tragedy. But clearly some people did not take that message to heart. A new op-ed on CNN's website suggests that the country doesn't address the contributing factors to mass shootings because this is, quote, a white man's problem. The author arguing that the issue would be handled differently if the perpetrators were brown or black, she writes. Joining us now, Gianno Caldwell, a Republican political analyst and Fox News contributor. Wendy Osefo is political commentator and professor at Johns Hopkins University. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you here this evening. Troublesome. You know, I mean, I read through this post on CNN, this article that she wrote, and she basically makes the argument that this is handled differently because the perpetrators are usually white. And if they were brown, they would be considered terrorists. And there would be, you know, a question of them going against American values and that these are handled differently. Gianna, let me start with you. What do you think?
I think it's a fallacy. I think it's politicizing something that's a very serious issue in our country. I'm saddened to see so much politics playing when this Las Vegas tragedy happened. Immediately after, when the news began to break, we saw that. You know, me being from Chicago, I see these tragedies on the regular basis. 529 people shot since 2017, murdered rather, in Chicago. During Memorial Day weekend, my younger brother was in a car with two of his friends on the south side of Chicago when two male individuals walked up to the car and riddled it with 25 bullets. My younger brother lived, thankfully, but his best friend died in his arms. And then we have this conversation about comprehensive gun control and its benefits and how it would prevent tragedies like this. And I look at Chicago every day and I notice that it's had the most comprehensive gun control laws on the books of any city. And yet it did not prevent my brother's best friend dying in his arms. And you know what? My brother, I talked to him the other day, and he's a gun license holder. He said his biggest regret is not having a gun to prevent the shooting, the murder of his best friend. This has become very troubling for anyone on the left to make this a political issue.
Wendy, what do you think?
Well, I don't think it's a political issue. I just think that we have to look at what the data says and how the data supports this narrative. We had a study from 1982 to 2012 where it examined 66 cases of mass shootings. Of those 66 cases, 44 of them were committed by white men. So we have this empirical evidence that suggests that this whole narrative of the lone wolf is something that we have continued to perpetuate. So it's not necessarily the data, but it's how we characterize it. Whether we look at James Wolfe in Aurora, Colorado, or when we look at Dylan Roof in Charleston, South Carolina, the first thing that came out in the headlines was the lone wolf. And it's not a lone wolf mentality, it's actually a pack of wolves. And we have to start looking at it like that, because when a Muslim commits the same type of acts, what we will say immediately is this was an act of terror. And we see that in the London subway bombing. Before the facts even came out, President Trump tweeted, "This is a terrorist attack," and he called them loser terrorists.
It is terrorism. I mean, no matter what you look at. Well, what happened in Las Vegas is terrorizing. What I don't understand is why we have to look at everything through that lens. Evil is evil. Right? I mean, it really doesn't matter the color of this man's skin. Now, I can see where it matters in terms of profiling, in terms of understanding, in terms of you know, figuring out how to get at these issues. I mean, we've seen, you know, in Sandy Hook, you know, a kid who sits in his basement all the time playing violent video games and has mental health issues and access to guns. That's a poisonous cocktail right there. And we need to understand it. But this, you know, this finger pointing and saying, oh, it would be judged differently if it were this or that. I want to just switch gears here for a moment and talk about something in a different context, but that is also pointing out, you know, ethnicity and race and dividing us, perhaps some would say, when they see this. Let's play this from Michelle Obama and then a tweet from Ronna McDaniel.
At the State of the Union address, one side, all men, all white. On the other side, some women, some people of color. I was always the most embarrassed at the beginning when people would see that.
This is Ronna McDaniel. Maybe unfortunate, Michelle would disregard contributions of conservative women and people of all backgrounds with one sweeping false accusation. Gianno, we got to get a quick answer on this from both of you. Thanks. Go ahead, Gianno.
I mean, Tim Scott, Mia Love, we can go down a list. More importantly, you look at the people that were on the stage in the 2016 election. We had the most inclusive stage of anyone you're talking about on the Republican side. Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. The Democrats didn't offer that whatsoever.
Carly Fiorina. Wendy, what do you think?
I think the fact that Gianno can actually name them proves Michelle Obama's point. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, you shouldn't be able. Yes, it does, Gianno.
Wendy,
you shouldn't be able. Wait, let me answer. I didn't interrupt you, Gianno. I didn't interrupt you.
Go ahead, quickly,
so
Wendy.
Let's put this in context. She was at a diversity conference. That's what the topic was about. She didn't just pull this narrative out of the wind. She was talking about diversity when it comes to race and gender, and she spoke to it. So we have to put it in context and not speak to this as if she just made this comment.
The underlying facts have to be true. You can't just go out stirring up that notion and rebuilding that notion in people's minds if it actually isn't what happens.
And that's the truth of the matter. We don't have diversity. We have to speak to it.
I got to jump out. Gianno and Wendy, good to see you both as always. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So breaking news.